UCLA gutted out a win versus Maryland, but Nico and Jerry have to be much better next week versus Indiana.
You are Locked On UCLA, your daily podcast on the UCLA Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to this edition of the Locked On UCLA podcast. I'm your host, Zach Anderson-Yoxsimer. Thanks for making this show your first listen each and every day. It's free wherever it's your podcast, and it's available on YouTube. Like, comment, subscribe, download. Thanks for your support. Welcome back, everydayers. Welcome back. What we're talking about today, Nico and Jerry had a pretty woeful game against Maryland, but it was the defense that bailed them out. So let's talk about what the offense did in this 20-17 win over Maryland, where the Bruins are able to put together a touchdown drive late, a field goal drive to win it, gifted an extra free 3 points late in that one. UCLA ended up with 400-plus yards of offense, 7 of 17 from third down, so okay percentage, a big fourth down conversion. UCLA close to 6 yards per play, 10.5 yards per completion, but it just left a lot to be desired. All right. Nico individually, I was excited with the way he gutted it out, led the Bruins down the field for a game-winning drive that led to a very easy field goal for Mateen Magani to knock in for the game winner. The problem is Nico had 2 picks and an interception against a pretty stout Maryland defense that the Terps, one of the best at not only just intercepting the opposition, but turning into points. I think they now have, 4 pick sixes this year after Nico's pick on Saturday night, where the Bruins, it didn't seem like they could have lost this game other than shooting themselves in the foot. And the Bruins did that again and again and again. UCLA lost their turnover battle. The defense had plenty of opportunities to force more turnovers, but when your defense forces at least 2 turnovers and then you lose the turnover battle, that says a lot about the offense for UCLA. The Bruins rushed for nearly 200 yards, but the problem was UCLA had 10 penalties for 85 yards. So this comes to a 3-point critical breakdown. 1, Nico. Nico, man, what are with some of those reads? Cost UCLA a total of 10 points. What do I mean by that? The Bruins, at the end of the first half, had a chance to get 3 points, get an extra 3 points. Instead of leading 7-3, UCLA could have been leading by a touchdown. And instead, one of those picks cost the Bruins 3. The other interception, after the defense had a crucial 4th and goal stop after what I thought was a horrible Maryland play call, he threw a pick 6. Bad read, out routes, and now you can argue about the play calls from Jerry, the routes. But when they're deep in their own end zone at the goal line, and it doesn't seem like Jerry or this UCLA coaching staff still trusts the pass protection of Nico, it's been much better. They've unleashed something when it comes to the running game with 2 to 3 to 4 running backs, not including Nico. But it still leaves a lot to be desired when the opposition has a couple of sacks and 4 tackles for loss. All right. So Maryland still got in the backfield, forced pressure, forced Nico to make plays. We haven't seen a lot of Nico scrambles, and I don't think that'll be as open after he just torched, and I mean torched Penn State to the tune of a James Franklin dismissal from his own job. That's how bad Penn State did defensively against UCLA. So teams aren't going to just let Nico run willy-nilly all up on their defense. Indiana's not. Ohio State's not. All these other defenses, you're not going to see Nico do it 10 to 15 times. You might get a couple of breakdowns, but you're not going to see it again and again where they refuse to cover Nico. So it's great to see UCLA's rushing game continue to be a dominant force. So the guys up front are physical, and it found something that works. The problem is that when they're deep in their own end zone, that leads to a poor read by Nico when they should have done out and up, and he throws a pick 6. When the guy was baiting Nico to throw it, ran and walked in for a touchdown where you're just like, wait, what happened? And then UCLA had to scrap and claw on their way the fourth quarter just to get a touchdown to go ahead in this fourth quarter, where they had a 4th and long conversion near midfield, tack on the extra 15 from Quasi Gilmer on the targeting from the defense, and the Bruins were set up to win this game. It was a huge play. Nice last couple of drives by UCLA. The last 2 full-length drives, we're not talking the Maryland fumble at the end of the game. We're talking the last couple of drives by UCLA, or was it a pick? I forget which one it was. But the last couple of drives UCLA had that went down the field to score a touchdown and the go-ahead field goal, huge. promises, breakthrough, the same UCLA offense we've seen just be unleashed and put up close to 35 points a game under Jerry Neuheisel. And the thing is, a clunker from the Bruins still led to 20 points and plenty of opportunities to score where they just didn't. They didn't. But the Nico decision-making, and then you tack on the fumble where he got hit, and that's where the pass protection comes in. And I think that's why we saw Nico go with a quick pass near his own end zone, didn't want to maybe give up a safety, get sacked deep in his own territory, led to a pick six. All right. Maryland scored one touchdown in this game, and it was on their last offensive drive. The other points were because of UCLA mistakes. Now, yes, Maryland could have scored a lot more points if they could have punched it in from the 1 yard line on multiple occasions, could have put up to 25 to 30 points in this game. Instead, UCLA said no. And when the defense was playing that well, that's why it's so frustrating to see Jerry Neuheisel and a UCLA offense just almost get told to kick rocks sometimes. 10 penalties for 85 yards. Now, if you take away the worst penalty call I've ever seen on a phantom block in the back from Quasi Gilmer that took away a huge run from Jalen Berger that could have changed the game early in the fourth quarter. If you take away that phantom call, you still have close to 9 penalties for 75 yards. The discipline issues are still there. Switching the schemes, it's a lot for these players, but you can't just have the same mistakes by the same guys. And the problem is, it's not always false starts, it's holds. Holds and holds and holds are what are killing this UCLA offense. That's the problem with UCLA having some big plays and then they have a hold or block in the back. Now, the Quasi Gilmer one, absolutely terrible call. But the other 9 for almost 80 yards, still a UCLA problem. All right. Considering the Bruins couldn't break through, and yes, Maryland was a lot better than I expected, UCLA is going to be much better against Indiana because the Hoosiers didn't play particularly well in the return to Bloomington after Curt Cignetti got dubbed another multi-million-dollar deal extension at Indiana. They didn't play that well against the Spartans. It's going to be early time, noon kick in Bloomington. They're going to want to embarrass the Bruins. So for all the hype that Jerry Neuheisel got, this was finally a clunker. Now the problem is UCLA has been unable to win the clunkers in years past, in recent history. Even this year, when they played Northwestern or when they played UNLV, the clunkers were so hard to overcome, the Bruins just couldn't put it together. And that was almost the case in this one against UNLV, where they couldn't move the ball. Now, at the end, the Bruins had more first downs than the Terps, better third down conversion rates, were better on fourth down, better yards per play, 3 for 3 in the red zone. Maryland didn't score in the red zone, but it still led to a touchdown. So the Bruins executed just a little bit better, all because the last 2-minute type execution for their offense was pretty solid. I can't say elite. I can't even say good. At best, this offensive performance was a C-. A C- from the execution, from Nico being the guy, and from Jerry Neuheisel with what they game plan against Maryland. It just wasn't there. It was clunky. The fact that we had to wait for that game to start at 4:10 on Fox Sports 1 and wait till after 8 o'clock for that game to end, that's how brutally bad it was. It wasn't a high-scoring thriller. It wasn't the track meet where the time runs. It was punt, 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 punt. All right? We saw too much of UCLA's punt game in this game. All right? Too much. Way too much. So you have to combine the fact that Nico has to shoulder a lot of the blame, in addition to earning the praise for the fact that he came back after what looked to be, in my mind, a devastating knee injury. Like, I was like, oh, dude, this season's over. UCLA season's toast. The dream's done. And then Maryland just won. They just tied it. They're going to go to overtime. And that's where my mind started to go. But kudos to Jerry and Nico for figuring it out, him toughing it out, which he's done all season long, and come through and be that 2-minute offense that wins a game that's, all right, we don't need a 50-yarder. Let's go put you right near the doorstep and just crack it open a little bit and an easy kick for Pagani. All right? Now let's give a lot of love to one, Anthony Frias, who had 2 big-time runs, a touchdown run at 55 yards, a lengthy run at the end of the game, spinning off multiple Maryland defenders to put the Bruins in position to win this game right like at the 10-yard line. I forget exactly what yard line it was, but Frias, 4 carries and almost at 100 yards. All right? He's the type of guy that if you had him on your fantasy football team on a Sunday, you'd be like, Oh, I wish I had that guy. All right. But Frias is one of 4 guys not named Nico in the backfield getting carries, right? For a few weeks ago, it was Anthony Woods. Last week, it was 3 touchdowns by Jalen Berger. We've seen Javian Thomas have big-time plays. In this game, it was Anthony Frias, a little bit of Nico, and a lot of Jalen Berger with some of his rushing yards getting called back due to a terrible call by the officials in that fourth quarter. All right. And then you also have to wonder, if that call was so blatantly bad, did UCLA get hurt on other phantom holding calls that were probably, It is probably the case. Now, the Bruins have to be much better. You go to Indiana, you can't just come out and be horrific offensively in the first 3 quarters. Maryland played great defense, and sometimes great defense will win the day. But you can make better decisions. You can punt the ball and play the field position game, which UCLA, I thought, played much better and won that. And eventually it ended up helping UCLA win this game in the battle of field position, in the battle of special teams. The Bruins said, we will kick our field goals. We will get a couple extra yards returning the football in the kick return. While Maryland, if they had been willing to kick a field goal, say when they got stopped, maybe it'd be a different game. Maybe it'd be a different game if they were able to get down the field and be more instrumental in imposing their will offensively. But Maryland, their rushing attack was not as good as UCLA. They still got over 100 yards, but the Bruins were dominant, close to the tune of 200 yards on the ground, close to 5.5 yards per carry. That saved the day. And it wasn't Nico. This wasn't a full Nico performance that kept the Bruins in this game. It was everybody who made big plays. Titus Mokiao-Atimalala had a big-time game returning the ball and with 100 yards receiving. Quasi Gilmer, a big-time touchdown catch for Mikey Matthews to put the Bruins ahead. Everybody played a role in 8 guys getting the ball, spreading it out. Well, sometimes UCLA's got to feed the ball down the field. And I know Nico put a ball in a spot, in a couple of spots where you're like, dude, how's he moving across his body and throwing a dime in the guy's fingertips? Where at the NFL level, that's caught and that's a touchdown. All right. There's few guys that can showcase the mobility of Nico getting out of the pocket, throwing dots to guys who are right there, high pointing the football and dropping it. All right. Sometimes just a smidge out of the guy's reach. Other times it's just young receivers not making plays on the football. So there will be a couple of plays that might be made in this week's game against Indiana and future games that just weren't made against Maryland because the DBs are crazy hand fighters that made plays. And also, you have to say, Nico, you got to make better decisions. Getting texts from UCLA buds saying, you can't be a one-read guy, Nico. That's why there's all the knocks on him trying to be an NFL quarterback, where it's literally the mental component is you see every commercial Tom Brady talking about the mental component about how to become a quarterback and how you get developed. Not from school to school to school. It's because he fought at Michigan when he was a college quarterback. That's the mental makeup Nico's got to develop. Not necessarily the toughness, because there's been a lot of doubts and criticism about his moxie, which he's proven the complete opposite of at UCLA. It's the ability to read the defense and become somebody who can slice up a defense mentally, even though he did make some play calls when Jerry didn't know how to push the button against Penn State. Make some play calls and continually make the right reads that aren't just the first or second read on an open crossing route, all right? When you're new to playing EA College Football 26, like I was a few weeks ago, you're like, I need to see the open guy. That's kind of how Nico reads the defense at times. And then sometimes you need the pocket not to collapse. And that's where you see him shuffling his feet. He doesn't get planted to go back to move forward, to step into his throw. He's kind of shuffles his feet, uses his 6'6" frame a little bit too much to my liking, into what can allow him to plant, drive, and throw firmly down the field or just into his receiver's gut to have them catch the ball as opposed to floating it like we've seen a couple of times. The UCLA defense could have had 5 picks. Maryland's defense could have had at least a third or a fourth potentially if they were able to get a couple of those tipped passes up and intercept them the other way. At best, a D+ to C- performance in terms of gutty, heroic performances. Nico proves everybody wrong again, that despite having a bad game, UCLA can win it. They got to go back to the drawing board. UCLA was exposed a little bit and will have to be a whole lot of heck better when they play Indiana next week. The fall sports season is well underway. You've got college football. You've got big games in all sorts of postseason games. NFL Sundays, it's here, and FanDuel's got an offer you do not want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Go check it out. UCLA right now against Indiana, they're laying plus 24.5 on FanDuel. Plus 24.5. UCLA has been doing much better in 2 of the last 3 weeks. If you put money on the Bruins, if you're a new customer, you would have gotten that $300. You can go with parlays. You can go with player props. Go see if the Bruins are ready to be a big-time upset, whether it's against the spread or this time on the money line. But if you're going to go to FanDuel and join in on the fun, it makes every game more exciting down the bitter end when you're riding on the action. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. All right, that's going to do it for us here in Locked On UCLA. We'll talk more about what this means for Tim Skipper, what it means going into Indiana, and now that there's even more in-season coaching openings, how's that going to affect the UCLA search? All that and more on future Locked On UCLA episodes. And hey, we got basketball coming up as well. Men, women, everything here in this fall sports super time in the heat of October. Hands up, Bruins fans. 8 clap time, baby. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Like UCLA fight. Something you never thought you'd hear me say. UCLA controls their path to the Big Ten championship. What? We got to discuss all this stuff. Like, comment, subscribe. Let me just be crazy about what this UCLA team has done. Let's talk about it. We'll have a lot more fun. Thanks for tuning in. Zach signing off, saying, go Bruins.